given that this is a crossover event, much anticipated crossover event, and people might not be familiar with either one of the two of us. Why don't you start by introducing yourself and tell everybody how you came to be that person?
I'm Kenji López-Alt, James Kenji López-Alt. I came to be that person because my mother's Japanese and she gave me the middle name Kenji. My father's American of German descent and gave me the name James. His last name was Alt, and then when I got married to my wife, Adriana Lopez, she's from Colombia, and we both changed our names to López-Alt. So that's how I came to get the name, which a lot of people ask. And they ask if I'm like Mexican Chinese, which I'm not. I'm half Japanese, half American, and I took my wife's Colombian name. But other than that, what do? I'm a writer primarily, so I have a book called The Food Lab, and I have a children's book coming out this year called Every Night is Pizza Night, and I'm working on another book about cooking and a walk, and another children's book as well. So that's my main thing. I was also the managing editor of Series Seats for a while, so where I wrote a column called The Food Lab also. These days I have a restaurant with my partner sitting across on the other side of the camera right now, but I have a restaurant where I'm the chef, and right now all we do is serve. We're making these meal boxes that we're serving we're free boxes that are paid for via donation that we're serving to hospitals and community centers. So I don't know how I think we've done about 3,000 of them now, but other than that, we're closed for business because of the virus.
So how's business? How is this affecting you?
I mean, business is bad.
Well, obviously, but I mean, it's like, are you dead in the water? Or like, are you gonna survive this? What's it looking like?
No, I mean, I think we'll survive it. We're still doing these free meals, so that's bringing in some amount of revenue. Although there's not really any profit. It basically covers enough to produce the meals and to pay the people, pay our staff who's making them. So, in that sense, it's good. Like we're at least able to retain some of our people. It would be nice if we could retain all of them, but even if we had the money to, it's not possible. Just given that, how densely we can staff people, it's just not possible.
Yeah.
I think more importantly, it's like we're helping the community, and I think. And that's it's good for everyone, right? Like, of course, it's great for the community. It's also great for the restaurant because I very much believe in the power of doing good. Like that doing good is good for your business also. So I think the more good we're able to do, the better word of mouth we get, and the more people want to support us when we eventually do open. So so in that sense, I think it's all a win-win. Yeah, but it's a little hard though because we don't know when we're going to be able to reopen, and so it's hard to predict and hard to plan for. So right now we're just kind of treading water and taking things as they come. And
fingers crossed for you. Yeah. Everybody's pulling for you. So where'd you come from? Like you're a chef, but you also clearly have a science background and a writing background. Like how did you become the media empire that you are today? Media and culinary empire that you are today?
If by media empire you mean like a guy who wrote a book and then now shoots videos with a camera strapped to his forehead like a dingus. All right. So I didn't go to school. I didn't go to culinary school. I went to school started as a biology major, graduated as an architecture major. I started cooking in restaurants while I was in college, mainly accidentally. Actually, I didn't grow up into food really. I'd been working in biology labs for a few summers, and I wanted to spend a summer doing nothing. And so I went around looking for a job as a waiter. They were called waiters at the time. Now they're servers. I went around looking for a job as a server, and one of the restaurants I went to just happened to have a prep cook who didn't show up that morning, and they said if I can hold the knife and I could come in that night to work, then I could have a job for the summer as a cook. So I took it. And it turns out that I really enjoyed cooking. I think I was one of these rare people that I got into cooking before I got into food. So even that summer, it's I was working at a Mongolian grill. It was called Fire and Ice. It was in Harvard Square. I don't know if it still exists, but I was a prep cook, and then a month later I was promoted from prep cook to Knight of the Round Grill, which I think is a pretty big promotion for just a month. which actually is my coolest sounding title I've had in my whole career, Night of the Round Grill.
Yeah.
But even that, it wasn't really cooking. So that I kind of fell in love with the sort of the rhythm of a kitchen and like the urgency and the adrenaline that cooking in a professional kitchen gets you. And so I kind of chased that. And so after graduating, I started working in kitchens and worked in better and better ones. And then once I started working in like actual real nice places, I was like, oh shit, like this is good. Like this, like I'm actually creating something here. I'm not just like juggling asparagus with a spatula. Like it's like I'm taking these raw ingredients, this like, $8 to $10 worth of raw ingredients, doing something to them, and then like there's someone over there who's willing to pay $45 for it, So it's like I'm actually adding value and transforming something. And so that's when I sort of fell in love with real cooking. And then after that, I actually started enjoying food. Because prior to then, I never wasn't that into food. Like my mom wasn't a great cook. She cooked. We had dinner every night at home, but my mom wasn't like a great cook. I hated fish. I hated vegetables. I was a pretty boring eater until I started cooking, and then I was like, I know, it feels like once you start cooking and you understand the process that goes into something, then that suddenly gives the food a lot more meaning and a lot more depth. Like some people get, and I do too also, but like a lot of people get meaning out of food because they feel like a cultural connection to it, or they understand the history of it. And the more it's like art. It's like the more something has a story, and the more context something has, the more interesting it is, and the more value you can get out of it. So I fell in love with food because I was interested in the technical aspects of it. It's like I would go to a restaurant and taste it, and try and decipher how they made it, or try and taste really specifically like what was in this. Think about myself, how would I be able to recreate this at home? And so that to me was the interesting thing about food initially. Now there's a whole lot more interesting things about food, but and so and even when I was working in restaurants, so I always had this kind of a scientific bent, like I always wanted to know why things worked, which is not really what you do in a restaurant. In a restaurant environment, it's like you basically you do things the way you do because you're told to do them that way.
Yeah, you got to go with what works, right? Because there's somebody hungry waiting. You can't theorize about something for an hour.
Yeah, exactly. And even if you could, it's like the person on the other side, they expect consistency. So what they want is the chef's vision, right? Like they want it to taste the way the chef wants it to taste, which means that you as a line cook, your job is simply to execute what the chef tells you to execute. Especially in the old days, it's changed a little bit now.
It's not as hierarchical anymore?
Well, some restaurants are, but I would say it's not quite as hierarchical. And certainly I think the overall attitude of restaurants has changed. They used to be, and a lot of them still are obviously, but they used to be super hyper macho, toxic. It was like hazing. It's like every cook had to go through this gauntlet of shitty behavior, and so because they went through it, they had to treat the new cooks the same way. So that's like something we very consciously try and avoid at my restaurant. Like we have a no cursing, no yelling, no public, no dressing down in public policy here, which helps. So we actually try and communicate with our staff instead of yelling at them.
Novel.
But so I was working in restaurants, and then I had all these questions I wanted to answer. And eventually I got when I got a little bit tired of working at restaurants, I applied for a job as a test cook at Cooks Illustrated, which is kind of the perfect job for me because, they have a very sort of scientific approach and a very methodical approach. Usually too methodical for me these days, but they have a very methodical approach to things. So I kind of got to really explore what I wanted to explore there. The only problem with Cooks Illustrated is that they have a very specific audience. It's a print magazine, print publication, and I don't know if this is the same in radio, but I assume it is, that you have a very specific audience and you kind of have to deliver what they expect. And especially at Cooks Illustrated, with the subscription model, it's like if a recipe, so we would send out recipes before they were done, and if a recipe didn't get an 80% I would make this again rate, then it was just cut from the magazine, which meant that you didn't really have too much room to explore. Wow. Anything that your audience didn't want, and our audience at Cooks Illustrated was mostly 50-year-old plus white people.
Yeah.
So that sort of limited what I was able to explore. And so after Cooks Illustrated, I was a freelance writer for a while, and then I started working for Serious Eats, and I started doing my column, The Food Lab, which is where I think I really got to take that sort of scientific approach to recipe development, but really do the things that I wanted to do, which is what I've been doing since then. So I wrote a book based on, it's a cookbook, but it's really, I describe it more as how do I describe it? I used to have an elevator pitch for this, but that was like 5 years ago. It's really a book that teaches you the sort of the hows and the whys of cooking. It challenges a lot of sort of traditional cooking techniques, which I know you do a lot on your channel, and you challenge a lot of stuff that I've come up with as well.
No, not really. I usually cite you as an authority.
Yeah, so that it's sort of a science book that's disguised as a cookbook. So it takes sort of recipes that are common in the American catalog of recipes, like mac and cheese and meatloaf and stuff, and sort of uses those as jumping off points to describe various properties of techniques of cooking, with the idea that once you understand those things, then you can kind of apply them to your own cooking. It's ironic. I'm sorry if I'm rambling too much. You can stop me.
No, this is great.
But what I find ironic is that when the book came out, and even with my column, like a lot of people describe it as very sort of prescriptivist, like you have to do it this way. Here's this chili recipe with like 40 ingredients. All of them are precisely measured. You have to do it this way or it's not going to come out the right way. Whereas I really intended it to be kind of the opposite. Like it's like I'm showing you how to make chili with like 47 steps so that you can pick it, so that you understand like all the different things you could potentially do to chili and how they're going to affect the end result. And I don't, like I made that chili recipe for the book. I tested it. I haven't made it since. Like I don't follow my own recipes, right? And I think it's crazy that people do follow them like to the T. Maybe you follow
beginners,
the first time because you learn that way. But ideally, what I want my recipes and my writing to be is rather than sort of like a set of like turn-by-turn directions to get to from point A to point B. I try to provide the context so that it's more like you have a map and you can sort of choose where you want to go along the path and sort of get a better understanding of the whole neighborhood instead of just like like a blind I'm getting here to there approach. Anyhow, that's what I do. And then I opened a restaurant just because I had a daughter, and I stopped writing when I had my daughter, and then 6 months into it, I was like, taking care of a baby is, there's a lot of downtime, and so some friends approached me saying, hey, do you want to be the chef at this project we're working on? I was like, sure, that'll be easy. I'll do a consulting thing, and then I originally was just going to be a consulting thing, and then and then I think Eater wrote a story saying, oh, Kenji López-Alt is opening a restaurant. I was like, oh shit, now I'm opening a restaurant. And so it became like a much bigger investment than I expected it to be.
So you opened a restaurant as a chef at the time of life when that's actually the very worst time to do it, when you have a very young person.
I don't advise it. It had a definite toll on my marriage, on my personal life that I'm still like struggling to get back. But I would not advise opening a restaurant when you have a 6-month-old. What about you? So I know
one of mine is trying to get in right now. Sorry.
Oh sure. I have to admit I'm not I wasn't an Adam. In fact, I'm so little of a subscriber of yours that I don't even know how to pronounce your name. But Adam Ragusea, I'm assuming.
There you go. You got it.
I subscribed, I think, like a month and a half ago when I started doing my own videos, and people were like, oh, you should check out Adam Ragusea's channel. And I started watching. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm not much of a consumer of media, although I'm more of a producer than a consumer of media.
No, that's the way it has to. People always think that. They always want to know, like, who are you reading, who you're watching, and it's like when you make content for a living, most of your time is monopolized making your thing, unfortunately.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I've watched your greatest hits, and now I watch your channel regularly. I watch the updates now.
Oh, thank you. But
I don't know much about your background. I know now that you were in radio.
Sure. Yes.
So I do know that you're a media person because I watched a video of yours about. I think it was the one about knife skills where you were saying where you're talking about how there's like a jargon in media that people use that lay people don't understand.
Yeah, a secret handshake, that sort of shows you to be a member of the Brotherhood in the same way that certain knife skills might be a way of showing that you went to CIA or whatever, right?
Which is like someone who was trained as a cook but is now in media. Like that metaphor was wonderful, I thought.
I made it just for you. I was thinking about you. I think about you often, honestly. I think about, oh God, well. Anyway, backing on up. Hi, I'm Adam Ragusea for Kenji viewers who have no idea who this guy is. I am a man in his kitchen with a camera. I am not a chef, I am not a trained cook, or I am not any kind of culinary professional. What I am is someone who, I went to school for music to be a composer. I failed at that.
That was my minor.
Oh really? Oh,
Yeah.
fantastic! Were you at MIT?
I was. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Good music. Good music program there. People don't realize.
Where were you at school?
I flunked out of Eastman, and then I finished my degree back at Penn State, where I grew up in State College, Pennsylvania. So
classical or what kind of?
Yeah, classical composition.
Oh, what do you play?
I'm a terrible piano player, terrible singer, terrible many things. But and then I went to grad school at Indiana University for composition again, and was really getting disillusioned with it. Was really not interested in it much anymore. Just because I have a person. The nice way of saying is that I'm a polymath, right? Like the nasty way of saying it is that I'm a dilettante. I want to like dip my toes into everything. Like I'm very interested in lots of things, and it was very hard for me to stay interested in one thing, regardless of what that thing was.
Yeah, it's difficult to apply yourself when you get bored with something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly.
That's
but
how
also,
I feel.
The thing that I think I learned about myself over the course of this process is that like I sort of, and I think this is common for young people in general, but especially young people who are prodigious in a creative pursuit, is that the people around them, your parents, your encouragers, your teachers will say, this is your thing. You're meant to do this. This is you, right? And comes a moment where, for me at least, I realized, that's not the thing that what I'm meant to do is make things, right? All kinds of things, right? It's the same part of the brain that works on the string quartet is the same part of the brain that works on the pasta. It's the same damn thing.
Do you get this feeling? So when someone tells you, "Hey, this is your thing. You should do this," like, "Oh, you'd be really good at doing this," like, does that make you not want to do it? Like, do you get that thing? Because I get that thing.
You get that thing? What's an example of when that happened to you? What did people say was your thing, and you were like, "Bro, that's not my thing"?
Well, honestly, it's like my book. So I'm working. So after my first book came out, The Food Lab, and it was like relatively successful. Then everyone's like, "When's Food Lab 2 coming out?" Or like, and my publisher was like, "No, you got to do." Like, I was like, I started writing. I was like, "All right, I guess now I'm a food science book writer," and so I started writing a second book. And then about halfway through, I was like, you know what? Like, I'd rather do other things. Like, I want to write a children's book. I want to do this. And my publisher was like, "No, like, we have this firm idea in mind about what you want to do." And it's like, no. Okay, like that's great. You have that idea. That's not what I'm going to do. Yeah. So that was like a very clear example of like, no, like I'm not going to do it. And them pushing me to do it like made me more adamant that I wasn't going to do it. So anyhow, in case anyone's watching, there is no Food Lab 2. There is going to be a book on cooking in a wok because that's what I wanted to do, but there's not going to be a Food Lab 2. At least maybe in the future. I don't know what future Kenji's going to do.
To what extent is that like the exigencies of making a living versus just kind of choosing to bloom where you're planted and do what the world appears to want of you?
So, I think I discovered while I was in high school that like I just don't do well at things that I'm not self-motivated to do. Like I can't. Ever since I was a kid, all my teachers said like, "Oh, he's going to do bad in college because he's smart, but he has trouble applying himself," which is true. Like I have trouble applying myself to just things I don't want to do, and so every career move I've made ever, and every career decision I've made has been always to like choose the path that gives me more control over what I'm doing. So like I ignored all the externality. I ignored the money aspect of it, and I just kind of went on faith that like if I do what I want to do, I'm going to do it well, and then people are going to recognize that I did it well, and then somehow a career will form from that, which is sort of what happened. But I'm sorry, we got back to me and we were talking about you.
You're the more interesting person. It's fine.
I disagree. I wasn't. I want to hear the rest of your story though.
Mine might get relevant to what you were just saying in about 2 seconds.
All right.
So I was really struggling at grad school. I finished all my coursework and did okay. I did my exit exams. I finished my thesis, but I didn't actually graduate because I basically
What was your thesis on?
It's like an orchestra piece when you go to school for composition. It's it's like just any kind of big ensemble piece is what they want for your thesis. But anyways, so no, I did what so many people have done before me. What so many wayward creative souls, people who have a lot to think and say about the world, but have no useful things to offer the world. I did what we've done, which is you find your way into the campus public radio station. So I landed a job at WFIU, the NPR station at Indiana University, and just as a classical music announcer, and then really quickly hopped over to the news department where I'd always been a news hound and was very interested in things that happen. And then I was like, oh, this is where I'm supposed to be. This is my career, And there was another exit exam I needed to do, and I was just like, no, I'm done. Screw you guys. I'm going home. So I did that, and then I got married in Indiana, and we moved to Boston. Are you from there originally, or did you just go to college there?
I was born in Boston. My family moved to New York when I was 3, and then my dad moved back to Boston when I was 10, so I spent a lot of time there, and then
Gotcha.
And then I lived there for like 10 years, college, and after I lived there for another 10 years. I would consider Boston my hometown, unless someone is talking about pizza or bagels, in which case I consider New York my hometown.
Generally, if a person can lay claim equally to either New York or Boston as their hometown, they usually go with Boston, which is interesting to me.
Yeah. Yes.
Just because maybe Boston is slightly less basic. I don't know.
Less basic, more racist.
That's right. So Lauren got a job at Emerson College in Boston, and I just went with her. And within a couple.
And what does she do?
She was doing like higher ed administration type stuff at the time. She was like running a dorm basically at Emerson, which was great because we got to like live, on overlooking Boston Common for free, which was pretty badass. And within a couple of weeks, I got a job at WBUR, which I imagine you listened to a lot.
Okay, yeah.
When you were there. And that was really where I cut my teeth. I mean, it was just a wonderful place to work. And people who have done their like deep doxing of Ragusea have found a pizza making video that I made for WBUR like 12 years ago. Yeah. It's super embarrassing too.
So you've been doing pizza for a long time then?
Yeah. So I did that, and loved being a reporter. Lauren ended up making a change of career and started writing books, and so now she's an author with several novels, mostly YA.
Oh, cool.
Out on major publishing houses, available at a bookstore near you. Lauren Moore. Yes. She was sort of free to go anywhere, and I was gonna shoot myself in the head if I did another Boston winter.
Right.
And
I love Boston winters.
You do? Oh, I'm glad someone does.
I do. I loved them. Yeah.
I'm a hot weather man all day long.
I like snow days. It's snow days. I love snow days.
Oh, yeah.
Like days
I miss
where
snow days.
you
That's
literally
nice.
can't do anything except like go out and like help push cars. Like that was one of my favorite things to do, was like finding people whose cars were stuck in the snow and then like pushing them because.
Except when you do live radio, there's no such thing as a snow day though. Like you have to get there.
Yeah. Even restaurants, very few snow
Similar
days
thing.
for
Yeah,
restaurants
exactly,
too. But
And then I just I wanted a change. I was looking for something different. I felt like I didn't, to be perfectly frank about it, like NPR, that sort of career ladder. I felt that as just another nerdy white guy from the Northeast, like I was just not needed there, right? And so I was just kind of looking for something else to do. So I saw a job for a weird posting for a weird new job in Macon, Georgia, where I live now.
Right.
And Lauren's from the South originally, and I said, "Honey, you ever heard of like Macon, Georgia?" And she's like, "Yeah, we can do that." So we went, and I did a journalism job here that eventually led to a teaching job. And I was on the journalism faculty at Mercer University for 5 years, during which time I did a bunch of other stuff. I had a podcasting consultancy, and I wrote a lot for the public broadcasting trade publication Current. It's like the trade paper. So basically, I was working as a media critic, essentially, criticizing in productive ways, I hoped, the NPR, PBS world, the American public broadcasting world, while teaching. And the program here at Mercer was very, very integrated. Everything was very multi-platform, multimedia, and I needed to teach video, and I had no visual background whatsoever. So I had to do things to get better so that I could teach. And one thing that I kind of did, I mean, I got good enough that I could do I could turn like a 90-second TV news package, but like virtually any, primate can do that. So like I just needed to get a little bit better. So one day I was like, I'm like you, Kenji, I'm very internally motivated. So I was like, I've been an obsessive home cook my entire life. And I've always wanted to try to make a cooking video because I have big thoughts about cooking media that I'm sure everyone is dying to hear. So I brought some gear home from school and I shot a couple of cooking videos just for practice.
Are those on your channel?
Yeah, it's the if people want to go back, it's like there's a roast chicken video and a steak video that are particularly poorly lit.
Would they just be the oldest ones on your
channel? Yeah, they're the oldest food related ones on the channel. I also have just like some other like rando crap on there if you go back far enough. I did those. And I put them on YouTube for the same reason I put all of those other videos on YouTube. It was purely a place to host video so that I could show it to my friends, right? No expectation that anything would come of it. I then had been working on this pizza recipe for a long time, and my friends had been asking me, "Hey, when are you gonna let us know this pizza recipe you're working on?" I was like, it's kind of hard to describe. I wish I could just show you. So I was like, okay, I'll just make a video. So this was like Christmas break 2018. So at the very end of 2018, December, I brought some gear home and shot my first New York style pizza video. Which I put together.
11 million views?
Yeah, 11 million views, yeah.
Pretty good.
So again, I just threw that up just to show my friends. But yeah, it randomly, the algorithm TM selected it.
Right.
And it kind of blew up in about March of 2019. And, and I've been working in media professionally, in public radio, but also writing for internet publications. I've had pieces for Slate go viral limitedly and stuff like that. I've had things blow up before. And I just sort of knew from that experience that that kind of popularity, for lack of a less loaded term, is not something that anyone can create forcibly, right? It's the kind of thing that just happens organically, usually, right?
Yes.
And that it does not matter if that's not what you had in mind for your career or your life, right? It has chosen you. And so you grab it, with both horns and ride that bull as long as you can. And here I am. So, yeah. Well, no, I mean, this is something I've been, doing all of the kind of food investigation type stuff that I do now is stuff that I've been wanting to get around to my whole life, right? And I haven't really, I've mostly just had to rely on Kenji articles to kind of satisfy that curiosity. I'm not joking, that's true, right? Whereas
does the video element of it still, does that, do you ever find that weighing down on you, the fact that you have to make a video out of the stuff that you're doing?
In the sense that I still don't feel totally comfortable in the medium, yes. I'm trying to look at my camera lens right now, and that's still deeply uncomfortable for me, right?
That's hard to get.
Everyone kind of when I first started doing videos where I was appearing on camera, everyone commented about my eyes being wide, and I think it was just a manifestation of my intense concentration, trying to look at the lens and not the viewfinder. The lens, not the viewfinder. The lens, not the viewfinder. Right?
There are some super old videos from when I was at Test Cook at Cooks Illustrated, I think 2007. Maybe they were on YouTube, went up on YouTube 2009, of me talking about, videos we shot at the test kitchen there where I'm just so incredibly awkward.
Well, if people haven't seen those, they're going to see them now.
I don't mind, but you kind of just have to get, you kind of have to get okay with understanding that you're always going to seem awkward to yourself, and the more you get over that, the more natural you end up seeming. It's just practice. Yeah, it's the same in radio, right? It's you gotta. There's a skill and practice involved to getting to sound natural. Nobody just sounds naturally.
Yeah. The advice they give you, which is to just talk normal, talk the way you normally would, is well-meaning advice, but fundamentally wrong and not helpful, right? Because you're not good enough to relax yet, right? You have to get good before you can relax and be yourself, and that's a painful process. But one of the things that I feel I've learned over my life of making things is that It's not the only way to get good at something, but the fastest way and the most effective way to get good at something is to just get out there and show the world your ass until you don't suck anymore, right? And so,
yes.
In many ways, I feel very fortunate that I, sort of blew up on the internet when I was 37 and not 27 or 17, right? Because I don't think I would have had the confidence to just show my ass and my terrible shooting and lighting and everything to the world, right? Had I been younger.
Yeah.
But now I'm like old and I don't care what anybody thinks, and like, and I'm fine just like, being bad until I'm not. And I'm increasingly feeling like I'm not, although there's still aspects of the medium that I still struggle with a lot, So to answer your question, yes, I mean, it's burdensome in the sense that I'm still not super good at this, though I feel I get better every time. But in the sense that like I have this part of my brain that likes to put things together. It's super satisfying. It's the exact same part of the brain that I wrote music with and made radio stories with and everything.
The creative
it's the same part. So I freaking love assembling things out of nothing. That's awesome, don't you?
That's. I do. So I do. Sometimes I feel like. So let me back up. So I've been writing for a long time, and then ever since, even before my book came out, I was on Serious Eats, and like we knew that video was a thing that's big, and like people are going to start watching more and more videos. Like, and in like 2012, 2013, nobody watched videos, but it was getting bigger and bigger, and so it's like. I have to figure out a way to make the Food Lab relevant on video, and so like I kind of forced myself into doing things, and so I tried everything from like super cheap setups to like putting a lot of work into home setups, and then we even like spent $50,000 once producing like a 6-episode Food Lab miniseries, which stupidly we partnered with. Who did we partner? Vimeo, I think, and they wanted to make it exclusive, so you had to pay to watch it, and so. It was not the right way to do it, and I've always been about like just give people stuff for free, and like the money will come back to you eventually. Yeah. That's sort of my attitude, which my publisher also doesn't like. But it took until literally like a month and a half ago before I realized, hey, you know what, so my writing style is like whenever I'm writing, what I try and do is I try and make it feel like I'm talking to a close friend of mine, and I'm really excited about this thing I learned, and I want to explain it to them. Right? That's like what I try and do, capture in my writing, and that's what I was like trying to figure out. How do I make that work in video? And it turns out the way you make that work in video is like you strip off everything, and you literally just put I put a camera on my head, and I just pretend I'm talking. I pretend I'm like having a little dinner party, or I'm cooking with a friend. One of my nerdy friends who's really into cooking, and I'm showing them how to make a dish. Yeah. Like that's all I do, and that seems to work. And it turns out like that's also like the lowest production value, and it's also part of the reason it works is because modern video is very different from like highly produced television video, right? It's like people watching videos on YouTube don't give a shit about the production value. In fact, it helps. The fact that like I have a spoon closing that's holding my cabinet closed because I can't be bothered to replace the hinges, like that actually helps my videos because it's like, oh, here's like a real relatable person, and they feel like and people feel like they're part of a club because it's like, oh, okay, like I noticed this thing that was in the video before and that one that was in the video before, and so there's like common threads they can follow through, and it makes it feel like, all right, like here's a real person who's like really cooking, and it's not some highly produced show where I don't know if I follow what they say I'm going to get what they produce because I can't see all the magic that's happening behind the camera.
Back when I was a media critic, my tagline was "Authenticity is the new authority," and this seems
that's great.
to be another perfect piece of evidence supporting my brilliant thesis. Thank you.
The problem I found though is that like initially when I started doing these videos, it was like, all right, all I have to do is put a camera to my head and start cooking, and that was working for a while. And now I have to catch myself and be like, because sometimes I'll think like, oh, I should do a video on this, I should do a video on that, and then like I'm like, all right, here I'm gonna plan my shopping list, and I have to like literally like catch myself and say like, no, like that's not what my channel's about. Like I'm not gonna put in the extra work to do that. If I do that, it's gonna become work, it's gonna become a project, and I'm not gonna do that. So like maybe by the time this video is out, it'll be up. But I just did a video on making New York pizza, And I was just kind of like, I don't, we're in the lockdown right now, so I didn't have the right flour. So I did a bunch of things that I normally wouldn't do. And then when I started stretching the pizza onto the peel, like it totally ripped open, like got a huge hole in it. It was ugly as fuck. But I said before, like, no matter what happens in this video, like I'm gonna post it. And so that's one of the, it's like you just have to kind of like, I know there's going to be people in the audience who are like it's going to make me lose credibility because of it. It's like, oh, like how can I trust his pizza recipes when he fucks up pizzas? And it's like, but then I think there's an even bigger part of the audience that's going to be like, all right, like it's okay to fuck up a pizza.
Exactly,
like,
and here's how you recover from it.
Anybody who's any professional pizza maker, like they have had countless fucked up pizzas, right? And like and the trick is just remember, like, it doesn't matter. Like, it's still, you can fuck up. It's it's like having a 3-year-old daughter. It's like, and you with your, I'm sure you have the same thoughts with your kids. It's like, you kind of have to teach them, like, it's okay to fuck up, and like, it doesn't make you less of a person. It doesn't make, and these are things that like I didn't learn as a kid, so I'm kind of learning them now as a 40-year-old. And so, I spent a long time kind of suppressing.
Well, I think the other thing that's going on there is that it's like, you don't just make pizza, right? You do lots of things, okay? And whereas like you will no doubt get comments from guys who, and they're usually guys, who all they do is make pizza. And so they never tear their dough, right? They open up that dough perfect every single time because they do it 10,000 times a day. And I think for me it's been like, I feel that I have to come up with an answer to that guy, because that guy's implicit question to me, even if he doesn't say it, what's implicit in his comment is, why are you monkey, why are you on the internet telling people how to make pizza instead of me, right? And, and sometimes I kind of think, well, maybe it shouldn't be me. And so that's why now that I do this professionally, I've got the time to like go to restaurants and like show other people making the things that they make, right? Which is something I want to do more and more as time allows, But it's also the case that like, ultimately, the person, the end user of the product, the video, the recipe, the article, is not someone who's going to make pizza 10,000 times a day. They're going to be like you.
They're far more similar to you. They're much more similar to you than they are to the professional.
And therefore, your experience is actually more relevant to them.
You don't have to worry about another job, so you have the time to explore the questions that they have and answer them in the way that they would like to be able to answer themselves. They just don't have the time to do it, so you can do it and look it up in a way that look it up, research it, practice it, learn about it, and explain it to them in a way that they understand, which is not, one prime example I have of this that comes up again and again is when chefs tell you to do the poke test with steak. I've talked about this one a lot, but it's like that poke test, where it's like you poke the steak and see if it's, to see how well done it is. It's like, that works, but really it only works if like you're in a restaurant and you're cooking the same cut of meat. Yeah, like from a regular vendor, or you do it so many times that you can just tell by looking at, like, all right, like a tenderloin is going to feel this way, a ribeye is going to feel this way, and it's like you have this built-in muscle memory that tells you, all right, this is done. But as a home cook who's like, even if you cook steak once a month, you're not going to get that muscle memory. So like, it doesn't make sense to apply the same techniques that you would apply in a restaurant, or the same parameters for cooking to home cook, because they just aren't professional chefs, and that's just not what they're, And in many ways, like a home cook has big advantage. In some senses, a restaurant chef has advantages for cooking because they have a team of people making it. They have better equipment. They have dedicated, vendors and stuff. They can get access to better products. But in many ways, like a home cook has even more advantages than a restaurant cook, because you don't have to cook for 400 people a night. You have all Sunday afternoon to cook for 4 people, and that lets you do things that you literally cannot do in a restaurant. Which is, so.
Well, this is the perfect thing for us to talk about, because I think a lot of people watching this probably want us to have beef, and that's like
New York Strip.
Yeah, like that, and also that, like, the main way that I encountered your work for most of the time that I've been consuming your work has been just as a member of your audience. But now the main way that I encounter your work is people send me an article or a video that you made to show me that I'm wrong, right?
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like,
People
and so,
do that
so
to
the
me
steak
too,
one
yeah.
is a perfect example, right? Because like I don't tempt my steaks with a thermometer. I use a combination of poking and looking for the the myoglobin saturated water sort of surfacing, right? And so people will like people will send me knocked over my pepper grinder. People will send me like that excellent video that you did showing why poke tests are unreliable, which they are, right?
Right.
But one of the key things I try to argue or communicate is like just because you accept an empirical reality, you accept the science on something, that doesn't necessarily dictate a certain course of action for how you respond to that knowledge, right?
Yes.
And so for the way that I choose to respond to that knowledge is by not really being all that persnickety about how precisely done my steak is. Like, if my steak is pink, I'm happy, right? I like it kind of rare. I like it a little bit north of medium rare sometimes. As long as it's in the ballpark, I'm fine, right? And then the other reason that another thing that I sort of think about when I see that specific steak video that you did is that it's like, I mean, you're right. I mean, we have no disagreements about anything. On the other hand, one thing that I would, like an amendment that I would say is that like taking the temp on a steak with a $100 Thermapen is very different from taking the temp on a steak with like a $7 grocery store thermometer. And you're gonna get some weird readings on a thinner steak with a cheap thermometer to the point where I almost think, give up and poke. And,
like on a thinner steak, why you don't, on a thinner steak, I mean, I just cut it open.
Sure.
Because a steak is not a water balloon. It's not like people get this idea. It's like, oh, if you cut into it, you're going to lose all the juice. It's like, all right, like I might lose 4 drops of juice from that one little bit that I cut into. But a steak, it's not like a water balloon that's suddenly just.
That's one of those classic examples of where like there's a rule that like people learn at culinary school and stuff, and it's like the reason, and it's based essentially on I would call that a myth, right? Like, I mean, you're not going to lose that much juice, right? But it's like the reason that the rule persists is because the rule actually works. It just works for a different reason. The different reason being that the steak needs to finish cooking, right? And it's gonna like its doneness, its internal doneness is gonna change a lot over the course of that like rest, right? It's the same thing with like the searing thing.
That's if you choose to rest it, of course.
But it's the same thing with like the searing thing, like the searing to seal in juices. That's wrong, but it persists because searing is good. No,
Right. Yes.
Right. And practitioners are called upon to figure out what works, not necessarily why it works. That's that's your job.
Yeah. That brings up like one of the things that bothers me most about sort of macho chef culture is like the persistent need to have an answer for everything and like for it not to be okay to just say I don't know, like I don't know why it doesn't work. It's like you watch like a Gordon Ramsay video and it's like. A lot of of course, like he's a great chef. He's a total asshole, but he's a great chef, and he and he has a lot of techniques that work. But it's like, why can't you just say, I don't know why this works? It does.
The categorically wrong things that come out of that guy's mouth, like at a regular, it's shocking.
And it's also okay to sometimes say like. Sometimes I like it that way. Sometimes I like it this way. Sometimes I don't care what the result is.
There you go. So this is the other kind of big thing, right? Which is like and people, so my video that is like my most viral video that is probably my video, one of my least favorite videos that I've made is this season your cutting board, not your steak video, which actually references one of your articles positively.
I saw that one.
Where like it's not, I didn't invent, board sauces, right? Like that's a thing, right? But like, everyone is just like, dude, don't you understand? Kenji talks about how like when you season meat in advance, especially far in advance, osmosis and diffusion and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I don't deny any of that. That's all true. That's all empirically true. What I question, and I don't think that this is not a disagreement with you at all. What I would just question is the broader assumption that even seasoning is always desirable. I like heterogeneous seasoning. I like sparks of salt. I don't like things to be seasoned all the way through. And I'm not trying to.
And I think that's totally fine.
And I'm not trying to persuade people that they should like their food that way, right? Like what I try to do is present everything. I use the I, pronoun a lot because and people think I'm self-absorbed and I just want to project my weird, peculiar tastes on everyone else and make them like what I like. And I hope I don't give people that impression because it's totally the opposite. What I'm trying to say is like, here I am, I'm not a chef, I'm just a person who cooks a lot, And I have, over the course of my life of cooking, learned that a lot of the ideas about what is good, what a proper steak is, or whatever, are not what I like, you know? And so what I try to say is, here's how I like it, not so that you will do it that way, but so that you can lead yourself down your own journey of figuring out what you like, what things are weird about you, and what you're into, right? And it's like, and I don't think it's just macho-ness. I don't think it's just machismo in the chef culture that leads to that, right? I think it's the necessity of running a restaurant, which, you know, tell me if I'm right about this, because you know a lot more about this than I do. But I would assume that it's just that, like, when you cook for other people, you have to develop this, like, platonic ideal of what the dish is, or what people will want, and say that's the proper way to make a steak. Whereas when I'm just cooking for myself, I don't have to do that at all.
It's not so much that it's more that like you know your restaurant and your menu and your dishes are in the same sense that like you have a writing voice or you have a video voice or a radio voice that people identify. It's a branding thing. It's like people come to a restaurant expecting a certain thing, and so, you know, unless you're like a very unique case where it's like you're one of those restaurants where you're the chef who's there all the time and you're cooking for a small group of people and they expect to just be taken care of by you and you tell them what's good that day. Otherwise, like, it's like they expect a certain thing, right? And it's like you have to balance what you want to do with what the expectation is. Like, at least if you want to run a successful business, you have to care about what the audience wants also. So, you know, with my writing and stuff, it's like I care a little bit about what the audience wants, but I don't care that much because I'm the only one whose livelihood it depends on. But a restaurant, it's like it's a business, and there's like, you know, 50 people employed here, so I have to care more about myself. I mean, I don't even make money from the restaurant, so it's like I have to care literally only about the employees here. And
really, so like, what is the primary source of your income these days? Is it the book? Is it the YouTube channel?
The book.
What is it?
Well, I don't know. Maybe next year the YouTube channel will overtake it, but it's the book. Okay. The book. Which is I mean the book coming out was great because it freed me, like, from a financial sense, freed me to do a lot of other things, like be a father and open a restaurant and all that stuff. So I've never taken a salary from the restaurant. I don't.
Wow.
We have yet to make profit that hasn't been either reinvested or gone to investors yet. So I haven't made a penny off the restaurant. Maybe someday I will.
Not this year.
Not this year.
Sorry, man.
Not this year.
Oh, that's rough.
Yeah. But you know, I think one of the things people also have to remember is, like, you don't have to define what you like. You know, it's like it's okay for your taste to shift. And it's okay to not be clear on what you like, you know? It's
and like something a different one way or the other day. Yeah, people will always, like, point out inconsistencies in what I do. Like, you didn't do that in this video. I'm like, I don't want to have the same thing to eat every single time.
Yeah, and that's actually, like, that's one of the things that being on the internet and having this, like, weird, you know, I don't want to call them weird, but, like, being on the internet, like, exposes you to people who will literally, like, track your every move better than you do. Right, and we'll call you out on things that you didn't even think about. It's like, sometimes, like, I'll say, I'm doing it this way because of this, and then, like, a month later I might forget about that and say, all right, I'm doing it this way because of this, and it doesn't mean that, like, I'm being. I mean, I guess it doesn't mean I'm being inconsistent in a sense, but you don't have to be consistent, right? It's like food should be about what you're feeling at the moment, and that's part of the pleasure of it. It's like. You know, it's like if I say, like, when I drive home, I take this route. It's not like if one day I decide, you know what, I'm going to take the scenic route and go drive by the ocean today. If I posted that on the internet, people are like, why did you go by the ocean route? You're supposed to go down this route. You said you go down this route because it's the fastest way home. It's like,
I do want to say, for the record, it's good for people to scrutinize people and things, right? That's good. Scrutiny is good. Yes. Critical thinking is good.
Yes. But I'm saying, I guess what the internet has taught me is that it has taught me that I'm inconsistent in myself. Yeah. It's sort of self-reflective thing. It's like, and then it's made me feel okay about that. Whereas, like, if you had asked me 10 years ago, why do you do this way? I would say I do it this way because of this, and then I would compel myself to do it that way every time, or feel compelled to do it every time.
Right, yeah.
But only once people start pointing out those inconsistencies, do you start realizing, it doesn't really matter, you know. Maybe it's also like being a father makes you soften up on those things. For sure.
Almost nothing else is important anymore. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's also like it's like it makes you think about your own flaws and your own personality, like the things that gave you hangups as an adult, and like what you want to make sure that your children, everyone wants to make sure their children don't go through the troubles that they had. And so, one of the troubles I've always had is that like I've been super stubborn, and like, to the point that like in the past it's like lost me friendships and stuff for dumb reasons.
Yeah. You can't be stubborn with a kid because they're going to out-stubborn you every time.
Yeah, it's like when you're teaching your kids things, it's like you start realizing, okay, they're reflecting my personality. I need to show them good examples, which makes you self-reflect.
Right. Yeah.
One of the funniest things, like since I started my YouTube channel, like one of the catchphrases of my channel has just become like it doesn't really matter. Like you could do this or do that, it doesn't really matter, which is like very different from I think what my previous audience knows of me.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so people say like in the comments like, this guy's the Bob Ross of cooking, and it's like if you'd showed me that 10 years ago, like that I was the Bob Ross, like that I was just like the easygoing, let the chips fall as they may like type person, like I'd be like, no, that's not me. Like I'm never gonna be that person. But here I am. So I'm much happier as that person.
That's a rough person to be. But that's the thing. I mean, I think the other way that having kids helped me with changed my cooking, and then as an extension my approach to what I do for a living is like it just the nice way to say it is it encouraged me to relax my expectations, but honestly it encouraged me to lower my expectations, right? Like about my food. Like it does not have to be perfect every time, and it doesn't have to be that good every time, right? So much like cooking media is like, it's the ultimate this, the most indulgent that, the most perfect this. And I'm like, no, mine is like good enough, Because it's like you just got to get something together while there's chaos going around you, and you're just trying to keep people from like jumping off something tall and killing themselves, right? Like get something decent cooked. And again, I think that sort of speaks to like, that also leads to why I don't measure, right? Because so like again, like anytime I measure flour with a cup, people send me an old Kenji article about how flour can exist in multiple states of compression and blah blah blah, right?
Yeah.
And it's all, and again, it's like, and they call me like a science denier or something, and I'm like, no, dude, I'm not denying the science. I'm just responding to it in a different way, right? Yeah. Like the way that I choose to cope with that reality is by like I start with a minimum volumetric, measurement, and then I add more based upon sight and feel, right? And the reason that I do that, apart from not wanting to get my scale out, is just that I like to have my head up when I'm cooking, right? I can't be like down in my phone looking at a recipe or down looking at a scale or any of this kind of crap. I want to be up using my senses and being present. Mostly as a preservation measure. Like I just need to see if someone is going to touch the stove. I can't have my head in math.
Right. I just watched your video on the metric system versus metric versus imperial units, so what I wrote an article about this a while back. But one issue that I find with with switching to any unit that you're not used to, the main problem I find is that you become too precise. Where it's like someone who's used to using imperial units, where it says like, take a cup of onions and cook it, and then they suddenly see 100 grams of onions. They don't know what 100 grams of onions is supposed to look like.
Right, on an intuitive level, so they can't guesstimate it,
Exactly, so they end up exactly measuring out 100 grams of onions, and then they're like, all right, what do I do with this, with this 1/18th, 5/18ths of an onion that I just chopped, that I have left over. Whereas like, when you become used to that sort of vernacular, you're able to scan a recipe and get more of a feel of it than having to follow the precise directions, and that's true no matter what units you're in. But that like switching back and forth between units, I find it's especially like when people take convert recipes. So it's clear when someone has converted a recipe from imperial units to metric, because they get things like 453 grams of onion when they really mean 1 pound. Or whatever. But so you look at a recipe that has been converted, and then you're like, oh shit, this says 453 grams of onion. They must have been really precise about measuring that. So now I'm going to measure out exactly 453 grams of onion. It's like, that doesn't take into account, that's just not how you should cook, I was going to say your whole point about how the units in a given country define the recipes, right? It's like, so Gordon Ramsay says 300 milliliters of chicken stock. It's not like 300 milliliters of chicken stock is the perfect amount. It's just that 300 milliliters is what the containers come in there, right?
Right,
and so like most recipes have a lot more wiggle room than they actually claim to.
Right.
So like my recipes, like I try and make all, like if it calls for canned tomatoes, they're usually going to be in like 14.5, whatever it is, 15-ounce increments, because that's what a can of tomatoes is here, right? But it's not because I literally tried 14.5, 15, 15.5,
Right, and that's the perfect
16,
quantity.
and decided that 15 was the right amount,
Yeah.
right? It's like recipes have wiggle room, especially because ingredients are consistent, right? Like the onion I buy today is not going to taste exactly the same as the onion I buy in a week. And so like how could it be that that the exact amount of onion is correct, you know?
Well, let me ask you this. This might be a good place for us to kind of wrap up. Let me ask you this.
All right.
Because I really I mean, one of the biggest struggles in my job now doing this is trying to anticipate the needs of my audience and not screw them up. Because the last thing I want to do is screw somebody up and cause them to ruin a bag of groceries, right? And so I'll have one approach, which will be to like write a recipe that's like really vague, and it's like, I mean, my basic pizza dough recipe is a classic example where I tell people start with 5 cups of flour and then add more as you need, just the minimum amount it takes to make it workable, right? Is what I usually say, you know? And I try to, so that's like sort of a vague approach. And I imagine that that's gonna help people, you know, not screw up, because even if they measure their flour to the gram, that could still cause all kinds of problems, because higher protein flours absorb more water, bleached flours absorb more water, atmospheric conditions can, you know, all kinds of things, right? You know,
yep. As evidenced by the pizza video that I'm going to put up soon with the totally failed pizza crust, which was measured on a scale.
B-roll that you're going to send me goes there right now. You know, so that's, on the one hand, like I think, okay, I'm anticipating their needs, I'm showing them how to feel through this rather than giving them sort of a precise thing to follow. That's going to set them up for success. But every day I wake up to like 3 emails or DMs from kids being like, hey, I tried your like pizza dough, but like the dough is super like wet. It's like too battery. Like I put in exactly the amount of flour you told me to. And I'm like, dude, no, I said you need to keep adding more. And I just don't, I wish, you know what I want to do? I want to do like a study. I want to commission like a research firm to like find out which style of recipe tends to be more successful for people in practice. But I can't do that. Or maybe we can do that. Maybe we should do that. Let's go Dutch on that.
Yeah, well, see, I mean, you know, the difficulty there is that well, I think recipes tend to have self-selecting audiences.
Yeah.
So like I worked at Cooks Illustrated for a number of years, and like there, like the audience expected a certain style of recipes and they expected a certain level of precision, and there we did massive amounts of testing to make sure that foolproofing, to make sure that like the recipe is written, like we sent it out to people, we saw how many people succeeded with it, we would fiddle with it, we'd send it out again, saw how many people succeeded then, and so like everything from like the style of measuring to like the sidebars that explain why you're doing it this way to the precise language was very well researched as far as how well it would work for that particular audience. But that's not the same as saying this recipe is going to work for like Sam Nosrat's audience is a very different audience from the Food Lab audience or from the Cooks Illustrated audience, and so like my recipes wouldn't work on them, and her recipes probably wouldn't work as much on mine. You know, like I know my audience tends to be the same as yours, and I only know that because like every other YouTube comment is like something about white wine, which I still haven't seen the video on.
Don't.
White wine or like seasoning the board, which I have seen the video on.
I'm so sorry.
So I know we have a widely overlapping audience, so hopefully this will be interesting to them. But you know, it's like, but that all goes back to the same thing. It's like people are different, and people want different things, and people learn in different ways, and that doesn't make one way more right than the other way. It's all just a matter of who you are and what you want out of it, you know?
Well, I mean, I think it's something that I always had to think about a lot in my old life as a journalist and as a media critic, is that it's like most people, even very smart, very educated people, haven't thought very deeply about the difference between opinion and fact, or what is objective and what is subjective.
Especially when it's outside of their field.
Yeah, exactly. Or even just like epistemology stuff, like how do you know what you know? Are you sure you know that? Right.
Right.
And so that's, on the one hand, it's like, yes, food is about what you like, and especially if you're only cooking for yourself, if you like it, that's literally all that matters, right? On the other hand, there are things that are objectively right and wrong, right? There are like things that people will say that it's like, no, that's not true. That won't have the effect that you are claiming that it will, or that's not the reason why that has the effect that it will, or
it's okay to salt your eggs before scrambling them.
Right, exactly. Which have you done the tests on that? Is that?
I have done that.
I assume that's bullshit,
I think
right?
there's a section in my book about it.
Okay, all right, okay.
Yes, it's in fact it's the opposite.
Oh, okay, good. Do you want to give people the short version of that? Because they're going to want it.
Oh, okay, yeah. So when you scramble, so like a Gordon Ramsay, a famous loud, angry internet guy, chef guy, he consistently claims that you shouldn't add your salt to your eggs until after they're done scrambling because it will tighten them up and it will make them drier or more rubbery. I don't remember exactly what he says, but he says they're going to be bad. But in fact, if you salt your eggs before, it breaks down some of the proteins, it loosens them up so they don't squeeze as tightly when they're cooking, so they actually expel less moisture when you salt them before. Anyhow, you know, this is one of those things where it's like if you actually like test it and measure it side by side, you can tell the difference. But honestly, like if someone gave me a bowl of scrambled eggs, I'm not going to be able to tell you if it was salted before or after. Like it doesn't really matter.
I will say though, a question for you about that, because like one of the things I wonder sometimes about like spurious chef dogma like that is that maybe it's the kind of thing that like it's actually kind of like wrong in the home kitchen, but maybe in a way it's actually like right in the professional kitchen, because like a chef doesn't know how long their employee is going to let the salt sit in those eggs. It could be for 5 minutes, it could be overnight, right? It's like all the professional chefs who see me putting salt into my yeast water and they're like, that's going to kill all the yeast. And I'm like, no, it won't. It empirically will not.
No, it
but
won't,
maybe that's a rule that chefs give their employees to keep them from leaving the salt in there for like 2 days. I don't know.
That's possible. I've never run a brunch place, so I don't know. I don't know. We do pre-blend the eggs for the chicken schnitzel. We pre-blend the eggs with salt, and sometimes we'll have them in like a Cambro in the walk-in that we pour out for service. So they could be up to a couple days that they've been there. But I've never really side by side tested before and after. And I'm sure that in that application it makes no difference.
Yeah.
But that's a good question. Maybe I will try salting my eggs 3 days in advance and see what happens when I try and scramble. In fact, I will. I'll go home right now, salt some eggs, let them sit for 3 days, and I'll send you the
vid
B-roll.
forthcoming. Yeah. Well, I suppose we should leave it there. Kenji, I've been such a fan I've been suppressing my fanboying over the course of this conversation. Your work has been so. I mean, honestly, I think probably the most complimentary thing I could say is like your work has been so useful to me in my life.
Oh, well, thanks. Thank you.
You don't have to say anything nice to me now. Don't worry about it.
No, your YouTube channel has been helpful. I did. At some point, we'll do another interview where I want to ask you about YouTube stuff because I'm a YouTube noob.
Do you want to give me? I mean, we could do like 10 minutes on that. I mean, you want to do a little now? Or?
Sure. I mean, there'd be basic. I mean, there'd be very sort of basic questions about like best practices on YouTube because I'll
give a quick answer. With the caveat that I don't know what the best practice is. I only know what has worked. Yeah.
Okay.
Similarly to how cooks know like how to cook. Like chefs don't know why things work. They just know that they have made customers come in.
That they do
door.
work.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. I will take all of your answers with a grain. What would be the YouTube analogy for a grain of salt? A smattering of upvotes. A smattering of lights.
A snide, excessively scrutinizing comment. You'll take it with one of those.
Okay, so let's start there. Like, so I know depending on the platform, it's important or not to interact with the commenters. And I know like YouTube is like notorious for being like maybe only second to Facebook as like the worst place for comments. Maybe it's even worse for comments than YouTube. Especially like, the more popular a video gets, like the more crappy comments there are on it.
Let me introduce you to 4chan, young man.
Yeah, I've dabbled a little bit in 4chan and Reddit. Yeah.
Run away.
But it's like places like so I find like on Reddit, for instance, like I'm one of the mods on the Series Seats channel, and I find like the quality of comments is directly proportional to like how much you monitor them and like how judicious you are with the ban hammer and blocking people. Do you find it's important to first of all interact with comments on YouTube, and then secondly, like how do you think it's useful or not to to hide comments, delete comments, bad comments. Not for disagreeing with you, but for just like generally being assholes. Like it's like I don't want people to come here and have to experience assholes.
So my people are no doubt laughing through your entire asking of that question, because I'm like the worst person to consult on this, because I have. I've really struggled with this, and because I have a pugnacious streak, and I can get into it with people, and it's usually bad. It's always bad. That's a bad thing to do, right? So here's, for what it's worth.
That's why I have a self-imposed ban for myself on Twitter. Like I quit Twitter for a while because I couldn't.
That's one of the good ways of approaching it. The way that I have settled into it now, where I've arrived at a kind of a détente with my comment sections, I think at this point, is by it's a technique that I took from a channel called 12 Tone, which people should go and check out. It's a really great music analysis channel, and what they do is Corey.
I think I follow 12 Tone.
Basically looks at the comments right when the video goes live, right, and reads them for about an hour. The purpose of that being to make sure that there's people aren't finding something that's obviously wrong, or terribly offensive, or just basic, first line quality control type stuff, right? That ideally, back in the old days of media was done by, an editor, but we don't have money for that anymore.
Right.
Right. So the people have to be the editor. They will look at those just for the first hour and see, what people are being confused by, or what they're maybe legitimately taking issue with, and all of that. And then they will, maybe post a comment, like a pinned comment addressing some of that stuff, and then they're out. That's it, right? So that's the approach that I try to do. I try to, if my schedule allows, I will be at my computer when the video goes live. I will look and see what people are saying. I will post an FAQ as a pinned comment, and then I'm out. When I'm being disciplined, and I'm not always, but I should be, and that's the best solution that I've come up with. But man, your guess is as good as mine.
All right. What about? I know you stick to a schedule, is it one recipe a week and one non-recipe video a week?
That's right. Yeah.
So how much of that is just your sort of bandwidth, and how much of that is does once a week seem right for? Right now I'm literally posting every day because it's just I got a camera in my head, I'm cooking stuff. But I don't know if I'm shooting myself in the foot. Should I be saving content and posting it less frequently?
It's got to depend on so many things. I think part of the reason it works for you is that it's a lower touch product, right? Right. Which is not to say, people are going to think I was insulting you, but lower touch in media, that just means it's less production intensive. It's more raw, right?
They'll know what you mean, and if they don't, I'll get into it with them in the comments.
Whereas I'm really, every single word of my videos is written, and everything is very choreographed, and with all of my Monday videos, especially the sciencey ones, I get them fact checked by experts. Days in advance and all that kind of stuff, right? So I don't think I could do more than 2 a week. And honestly, sometimes 2 a week feels like too much. And maybe if I was like Babish and I had I think he has a staff.
He does now, yeah.
Maybe it would be more doable, but I'm at the point where the business is successful enough that I could hire people. I just don't want to. I just don't want to. That's not. I can't imagine. I don't know. I feel like it being a one-person band is integral to the character of the work, right? I personally have difficulty working with other people. Yeah, exactly. No, and I think
they don't work at. I work at weird hours.
Yeah, right.
It's just I don't. It's not that I don't get along with people. It's just that the style of work I do is not conducive to team behavior necessarily.
Absolutely, and I had the experience of producing a live daily talk show at WBUR for 4 years, where you had to work with a team, which helped me. I was such an asshole when I first started working there, and I became less so over the course. Thank you to everyone I worked with, by the way, for tolerating my bad behavior and calling me out on it and helping me become a better person. So thank you. I'm sorry, right? But it's also I also saw in that process how much effort is wasted in the coordination. right?
Yes.
So much money and time and effort just gone in trying to coordinate multiple brains, and there's so much efficiency to be realized by keeping it right here, you know. So anyway, so yeah, I think 2 a week has worked for me with the style of video that I do and how I'm making it, and then also with the fact that I've been very aggressive about monetization in ways that have turned off lots of viewers, but luckily haven't turned off enough of them.
In
right?
what way? So I know you do sponsorships.
Yeah, I do a
your,
sponsorship in almost
videos,
every video. Yeah.
And then and as far as like ads, do you do like you don't do pre-roll, like unskippable pre-roll? Do you do any pre-roll?
Yeah, I let them do the pre-roll. I never let them do the mid-roll. Those are so disruptive. I let them do. I mean, the thing about I think I do let them do the unskippable pre-roll. But the thing is that like once you do that, you see how few of those there are. They just don't sell a lot of those.
Is that? Yeah. It's not like it automatically.
No. I think I don't know what it is. Maybe they're pricing them too high. But for whatever it is, they're not selling a lot of those. That's only like
I have no idea.
It's like 5% of my income is like if I look at it is like the non-skippable pre-rolls. Yeah.
And did you go through a period without it and then add it, and was there?
Yes, yeah,
did you do an A/B?
Exactly, and there's like nothing. It's just they just don't get that many. It's that simple. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I'll try that.
Yeah,
then.
you could try it, but again, but don't expect it to yield much either.
No. I'm not. I mean, whatever. Like, So for me, like So when I started doing this channel, my channel's been around a long time, and I've just randomly uploaded things, and then. And then at some point it's like that. I had this dumb grilled cheese video that I shot one night, late at night, that has like 5.something million views. And I was looking at my YouTube channel, I was like, oh, like I have this video that has a lot. And then I look back and I was like, oh shit, a lot of these like first person things where I strap it. Like I never really paid attention to the views on them. Yeah. I was like, oh wait, these have a lot of views. Maybe I should try. I wonder what would happen if I monetize them, or whatever, make a new one and monetize it. It's like, oh, okay, like I made some money there. I guess this is an easy thing. I can try it. And then and then after doing that, I realized, oh, it's actually fun to do these things. Yeah. And so if I can get like a revenue stream and have fun doing it, then why not? I've always held off putting pre-roll ads, but maybe I'll try it now.
Yeah, the unskippable pre-rolls, they're just it's a non-issue. There just aren't that enough.
Okay, well that is very interesting to know. What about this is also some nitty-gritty stuff, but like tags. Do you put tags in your videos?
I do. I use a Chrome extension called TubeBuddy, which has a lot of functions that are, in my view, useless. TubeBuddy. But their sort of killer app is their tag tool, which will auto-generate a whole bunch of tags for you, and it will auto-test it. It'll test them and it'll rank them, right? But I'm about to stop using that, I think, too, because YouTube. You can never know. You never know exactly what's behind the curtain, but YouTube has said that that tags aren't very important anymore in the algorithm.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, that's good to know because I don't use them.
Yeah. Well, what they say they're useful for is that if there are things in your video, keywords in your video that are commonly misspelled, put the commonly misspelled versions in the tags, right? Or in the case of things like French macaroons, otherwise known as macarons, right? Two different spellings of the same thing, right? That was a perfect opportunity for me to use tags, right?
Got it.
So but yeah, I choose to take YouTube at their word, and they're telling me that tags aren't worth the effort, so I'm probably going to stop, even subscribing to TubeBuddy. Sorry, TubeBuddy. Good product.
What about interacting with other YouTubers?
I don't know. This is my first one of those.
Okay. All right. This is my second one, although I think it's like the. I talked with Alex, French guy, cooking guy, a couple days ago, which was very fun. But yeah, those have been my first couple of interviews. So you have no answer.
No. Yes, we'll see how this goes. In fact, we haven't even talked about that. So should we edit this together as one thing and then we just post it simultaneously to our respective channels?
Whatever you think.
Let's do that. That sounds good. Unless you want to do your own edit on it.
I don't know. Originally I was thinking like I would ask you questions about like YouTube stuff, and you would ask me questions about cooking stuff. But I feel like it's all just kind of lumped together.
Which brings us right back to where we started: creativity. It's all the same thing.
Yeah.
That's called an arc, boys and girls. An arc.
We should just Do you ever do live stuff? Do you
I
ever do
haven't.
stuff on YouTube other than
my wife my wife, who's like really, really good at social media, and as authors have to be these days, as you know. My wife, who's like killer on Instagram and stuff, really discourages me from live streams.
What's your wife on Instagram?
Lauren Morrill at Lauren Morrill, and she just thinks. I mean, she finds live streams to be really tedious. So I do audience Q&As. It's like a show, a segment called Ask Adam, but I solicit questions in advance, and then I do at least a minimal edit on the video to keep it reasonably tight. I try to keep my channel to be a place for tight stuff, and in fact, this will be one of the loosest things I've ever put on the channel, and the only reason I'm okay with that is that I'm not going to do it as one of my regular releases. I want to do it as a bonus, you know.
All right. I'm following your wife now.
Okay, yeah.
Lauren E.
Yeah,
Morrill.
that's her. Yeah.
Author Mama, meant to be better than the best plan, and it's kind of cheesy love story.
Yes, those are some of her many titles available at a fine bookstore near you.
All right.
And bookstores, by the way, in the age of the Rona, are still operating. They will do curbside pickup. They will ship to your house. Support your local bookstore as you can support your local restaurant in whatever way is safe for you.
One easy way that you can both support your local restaurant, or you can support my restaurant, and you can support your local bookstore, is if you go to bookshop.org/shop/Kenji López-Alt. You can either buy my book, The Food Lab, or pre-order my book, my children's book, Every Night is Pizza Night. Yeah. When you do that, 10% of it goes to local bookshops around the country, and my entire sales commission goes to funding our free meal program. So that'll help keep my restaurant staff employed and also feed hospital workers and send free meals to community centers around the Bay Area. So that is a good place to buy my books. That's my plug for today.
And go over to Kenji's channel, or if you're on Kenji's channel right now, don't forget to smash that subscribe button.
Smash Adam. This was fun. We should do something else together in the future.
Absolutely. All right. So here is both our on-camera and in real life sign-off. Send me the footage. I'll cut it together. We'll talk to you. Good luck.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.